Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Field Day reaction portion of NGINX Sprint today. I hope you've enjoyed the demo sessions as much as we have. I have to say, seeing a bunch of command line within 5 minutes of the start of Sprint really warmed the heart of this Unix admin and NGINX user. So Tom, Karthik, thank you very much for joining us here for this Tech Field Day discussion. Those of you watching, essentially the Tech Field Day delegates are kind of standing in for the audience since they're here live on camera. They're going to do some, ask some questions, get some clarification, give some feedback, and then we're going to be back to more demos from NGINX Sprint right after this. So to kick things off, I'm going to turn it over to Kati to ask the first question. Go ahead.
Hi, I have a question for Tom. So you were presenting how to deploy have those enterprise-ready solutions. So what kind of challenges are you seeing your customers having? So what is the pain point that you are trying to resolve here?
The pain point I see a lot of customers having often comes with the initial install, and then to follow up often with, well, how do I move from one version to the next? And it's such a lower level thing that can often get missed. And it's an area we focused on very heavily by leveraging really very older methods and standards that are underlying with Linux packaging. So we leverage anything that's part of the Linux subsystem, anything that's standard with packaging for apt or yum repos, and really work on technology that has been used maybe too long, but is very mature. And that really helps us deal with a lot of scenarios where we have unknowns because we're working with systems that handle those unknowns, and we're able to really then deal with what I would think are some of the most common things that pop up, which mainly present themselves at the initial install.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Tom and Karthik. First, thank you so much for joining us. It's very much appreciated. We like the opportunity to ask lots of interesting questions. Mine has to do with two of the different presentations that we saw. One was focused on NGINX Instance Manager, which had some capabilities about managing a fleet of instances. And the other one was NGINX Controller, which was also kind of like about managing a fleet of instances. And for me, I felt very confused about the fact that this is two separate products. So can you kind of walk me through the logic of having this as two separate products, and if there's a plan to merge them at some point?
Sure. Karthik here. Thanks again. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Matt. That's a great question. When we launched it, we had similar sort of questions from our customer base, from our sales. Fair enough. Very fair question. So Controller has been around for about 2 years, I think at this point. Don't quote me the exact time frame. Where we started off with Controller was, we have this huge rattle off some stats. 450 million websites use NGINX Plus as a data plane. NGINX is a data plane. A lot of developers. There's a lot of developer love with the data plane. We wanted to provide a solution for the sort of enlightened network engineer, enlightened network ops teams to sort of manage the data plane. To deploy and manage load balancers, API gateways. These are the various personalities that the data plane can take. Controller then provides sort of an opinionated workflow for the network engineer, network operations teams, as well as in the case of API management, API owners, to accomplish API lifecycle management, or to manage the lifecycle of their load balancers, from deploying the load balancers. These are folks that are not familiar with NGINX directives, NGINX configuration files. Now, switch to Instance Manager. So, Controller addressed the needs, again, of the network operations teams that are, again, not that familiar with NGINX directives. They want just sort of a simpler workflow. The product is not simple, but a simple way to, deploy load balancers and manage APIs. Instance Manager, this is a solution targeted for NGINX experts, NGINX, basically the DevOps folks and developers that are actually familiar with the directives and NGINX conf files. they wanted a simple solution. Hey, I have a fleet of NGINX instances, both OSS, open source, and Plus. By the way, controller can manage only, or can manage only NGINX Plus instances. Instance Manager can manage both open source and Plus. Imagine a enterprise. I know I'm using a lot of NGINX instances, but I don't even know how many instances there are. That's where NIM comes in, NGINX Instance Manager, figure out how many assets I have. And I think my configuration is a bit rusty from 4 or 5 years old, from 5 years back. It'll help me fix the configuration. I'm familiar with the NGINX, configuration and directives, but solve a smaller set of very specific use cases for the, again, NGINX experts, NGINX folks that are familiar with NGINX, right? If not necessarily experts, but at least have dabbled in the config files and all. Does that make sense? That's the sort of big difference. You can go into
Thank you for. I think the main difference for me that you called out was the personas. Who is targeted for each product, and if you were someone who kind of bridged the gap between those two products, there's some confusion. But yeah, if you fall squarely into one of those personas, okay, I got it. That's what that product is for. So thank you, Karthik, for clearing that up for me.
Great.
Hi there, it's Jason. I have a question. I'm not sure who it's going to be for, but feel free to jump in, either of you, whoever thinks best. So I'm a customer and I'm using another API solution out there now. There's maybe quite a few, and maybe I'm using some legacy ones. How can you help me to move to the API gateway? Can I point you at my existing spec and do some imports, or have you got some sort of on-ramping tools that can help me with this?
Sure.
Go ahead,
Tom. Yes.
All right. So the API gateway use case is rather interesting because it's really very central to NGINX itself. And this is really where we'd want to start is using NGINX for what NGINX is really good at, which is that API gateway functionality. And the beauty is, due to all of the things it can do, it can really integrate with what you have and take you where you want to go and do that incrementally over time. Now, one of the areas that often presents a little bit of difficulty is, wow, that sounds great. And then it's like, oh, well, you got to know how the directives work in NGINX. And it's a bit of a learning curve. It's kind of like riding a bicycle. And it kind of was one of the impetus for Instance Manager, was trying to make it easier to use. And with that, Instance Manager and when we get to controller, all have APIs to interact with. So we've kind of doubled down on the fact that all of our solutions are going to be able to be used through APIs. And in that way, we're providing at least the framework to pull that all together. So in a roundabout way, I'm trying to answer your question by saying NGINX itself is what you want to use for the API gateway. And then for the management and for additional configuration to help centralize it and make that easier would be where we get into Instance Manager and then controller. Did that answer your question? Because otherwise I'm going to have Karthik do it.
Partly, but let's say I've got an API spec already. I've got a Swagger interface or an XML or something similar, and I want to move over from my other product straight into API gateway.
Right. So you could use controller, as Ken was demoing. So you could import that spec right directly into a controller interface. You could then deploy. That goes back to my point earlier about how controller sort of provides a somewhat of an easy button. You input those specs, deploy API gateways, and that is another strength that we have. I talk about distributed API management. So you can deploy the gateways wherever you want, on-premise, cloud, test, dev, sandbox. The gateway, that's the data plane that sort of processes API calls at runtime, that is not tightly coupled with the control plane that performs the API management. Sorry, I'm doing all this. API management lifecycle function from definition, securing, monitoring. So to answer your question, import the specs, everything via controller, deploy gateways through NGINX, and go from there. Right, stop. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Maybe as a just kind of build on that. Hi, hi Karthik, hi Tom, it's Paul here. Just a question. I kind of really like what you guys do. I like that kind of guardrails. It's a phrase that I keep hearing. That you're adding that wrap to the enterprise around development of internal applications. And I think from an enterprise point of view, absolutely what the enterprise wants. But maybe just picking up on what Jason's just been asking, is there any concern, or do you get feedback in the market even? And if you do, what's your answer to it? Is there any concern about a move to NGINX starts to lock a customer in to your platform and maybe takes away some of that DevOps flexibility, if you like?
I know the concept of guardrails is interesting, and pivoting to the DevOps side. It's really, I love the thought process here, and we've had a lot of that because with NGINX itself, just the core product adapts very well to almost anything with DevOps. It's one of the most popular containers used is just NGINX itself, and I know on the instance manager side, especially, we've built in some things that allow it to use other tools. One of which is we always assume we're not the single source of truth, meaning that if you use a tool that says this is the way I want things to be, we'll work with it. And it was also designed to say, well, I might only use this one piece of it. I don't really care. Like I might not even use the UI. I just want to use the analyzer. I just want best practices. And we designed it that way to be pretty flexible, to plug in and only use the parts you need to. On the other hand, many customers are all over the place in terms of their maturity. And so where there is room for really looking at a bigger vision, a proper way of doing things, we have the products in controller going that direction and handling it. But for existing CI/CD and pipelines, it's really interesting because it's, every different pipeline and CI/CD setup could be different. And it really has a lot to do with, I would say, playing well with others and just keeping that more as really more as almost a motto, a mantra within our product group and our engineering groups. Karthik, I'll invite you.
Absolutely. To provide sort of more concrete examples to what Tom was saying, Instance Manager, for example, Tom, you can correct me, just to be, it integrates with Grafana, Prometheus. You can export the metrics to commonly used monitoring tools. Controller integrates with Splunk as a Splunk data forwarder. So that's just one example of how we integrate with our tech ecosystem partners. Of course, we work very well with Red Hat OpenShift. To your point about, both Instance Manager, Controller, NGINX all have APIs as well that makes integration, especially for DevOps workflows, very simple. And we, like Tom was saying, we play well with the commonly used tools that DevOps uses, right? So I would think we provide a range of tools with all kinds of with a good degree of flexibility, so that we don't lock in people, right? Where if you're comfortable with the data plane, if you want to build your own tools, you can stick to the data plane, and we support that. If you want a sort of easy button management interface, we have Controller, and we also have Instance Manager to sort of, again, manage a fleet of NGINX instances. Yeah. And of course, NGINX itself is platform agnostic, on-premise, cloud, private cloud, public cloud, container, bare metal, VMs. So that's my response. I don't know if does that answer.
I think it does, and it kind of sounds like NGINX where you need it, but even where you need it, it can play quite happily with everything else that you're using as well. So that feels like it answers my lock-in question at least. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
I have a question then to follow up on that. You mentioned customer maturity. So, by the way, this is Nick. I tend to work as a sole developer for a lot of different small teams for doing contracting work. I was curious if you found yourself in a position where, other smaller teams are also using your enterprise offering without actually being at like enterprise scale. Like, is there going to be a lot of value for someone who might just have a couple developers? Maybe they have like 5 or 6 services running in production or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, the enterprise data plane, NGINX Plus, that provides robust monitoring, advanced security like JWT authentication, reliability, advanced health checks. So, whether you're a startup with just 10 folks, if you're providing a sort of a enterprise grade solution, you would need that. You start with the enterprise grade data plane. You would, of course, you may have started off with the OSS, then you realize I need all these, again, advanced capabilities. And then you could gradually, that enterprise user could start with them. All right, now I have a fleet of, maybe 25, even 30 NGINX Plus instances as I'm growing, or maybe a mix of both OSS and Plus. Let me start, how do I manage that fleet? Then you would use NGINX Instance Manager, and then as you grow further along, you would both perhaps have a need for more data plane instances, whether it's a load balancer, API gateway, or just controller for more advanced use cases.
Right. So basically just pull in some stuff as needed.
Correct. Right.
I'd also just add, Rob Whiteley had mentioned about our open source commitment and where we're going with that. And one of those big targets is developer groups. But keep in mind that for both anything open source and commercial, the focus is going to be for production use for either. So we want to keep that common, but there is a bit of a gap there, and I think that's exactly why we're looking in the area. I wish I could say like, oh, here's this version of this right now, but I can say it's a very strong immediate focus for all of the groups at NGINX to be able to address developer groups so that they have tools to work with, that they can use immediately and they could rely upon and trust.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem with making such a great core product. It's like, I just use the open source version and it's so good.
And we want you to, and we want to provide enough value where it is for, you to pay for that value, obviously. I mean, I know plenty of people just want everything for free. I mean, why not, right? I don't want to pay for stuff. But at the same point, I think there's plenty of appetite out there to pay for something that adds value, and that's definitely where we want to put our focus.
Yeah, thanks. Just to add, to your point, Nick, and to add Tom's point, again, 450 million websites use us as a server, right? I don't mean to keep somewhat shameful plug. I apologize, but the point is they are all running the OSS version, so powering website in production, right? So it's not that our OSS can't support production, but it's just, if you want, again, more enterprise grade advanced capabilities, then you would go with starting with the enterprise data plane.
Yep.
So my question harkens back to the instance manager demo. You talked a little bit about the ability to clone an existing configuration when you're spinning up a new instance. Is there also like a template engine or a policy engine that goes behind that? Like if I want to enforce certain policies in a configuration, or just have a template configuration that can automatically be updated and pushed to instances? Does any of that capability exist?
Or have you been looking at my roadmap? It's coming. It's coming. Upcoming feature attractions. It's certainly where our focus is. I think we've identified a strong appetite for really how I would say for a customer's own way of doing things, and really matching that up with NGINX's suggested way of doing things, and really the gray area in between. And one of the ways to accomplish this is to be able to share parts of the config. Like we can do the all or nothing, and then the plan is we'll start moving down to single file includes. So because a lot of us structure the comp files this way, where we'll have like well, there's default.conf, which is always a gotcha sometimes. But if I have Tom website, I might put tomwebsite.conf, and maybe I want to share that with others or common upstreams. The other thing we're looking at going even further and getting even more granular. So maybe we just say, oh, this upstream we could refer to, and these are the things where we're going towards. So I wish I could tell you I have that right now, but I can tell you these are more shorter term things that we're we want to address the use case of I need to share parts of the config to common, or common things to common instances. And usually it's almost like, hey, the whole thing except for this one part. Like that seems to be a very common one. But I'd certainly welcome feedback too. So please reach out to anyone at NGINX. You could reach out to me directly. Even I'd really welcome some more feedback on that. But yeah, I feel that's a very important area that we'll be focusing on.
Excellent. Yeah, one suggestion would be integration with OPA for the policy agent. That would be really useful to be able to analyze a configuration and apply some Rego to it to see if it lines up with what a corporation or enterprise's compliance needs are for a config.
I'll definitely look into it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.